Welcome to Rauta. This video is done in commercial collaboration with our sponsor, Steelfest. Welcome to Rauta's opinion video. This time it's once again about cancellation. Consider this my video as much news as opinion about it because, to be honest, if you're trying to Google Mayhem getting cancelled in Brazil, there are not too many sources about it. Now, I spent a couple of hours during the weekend trying to find information about it, and let's be honest about it, there's not too much information about it. First of all, if you take a look at the Mayhem Facebook site, you will see that they're doing Latin American tour in 2023, and here it says they go through Mexico to Guatemala, Costa Rica, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, and then when you will actually scroll down a little bit, and you will note first that they haven't really been updating the stuff. Like the latest post is about Guatemala tomorrow, but this was like 6 days ago, so already kind of old information coming. That I'm filming this one on 20th of March, and interestingly, Porto Alegre gig in Brazil is supposed to happen tomorrow, coming from this day I'm filming this. So by the time you are actually viewing this, watching this video, it's already bygones and old news. But what is more important, that if you really go into the comment section here, this video, the post about it, the poster about it, the whole tour and all, you will find out that, well, it's indeed getting cancelled, or looks like it's getting cancelled. And now the information about it, the cancellation and all, was pretty much like ignored. I was asking people around Discord if they know anything about it, and people were basically like, what are you talking about? I started Googling and basically found very, very little information about it. Then I went to Metal Archives because there was a thread about it, like a proper discussion. Exactly, it's not really proper because lots of people are spending their times, going over fallacies and all that stuff, like, hey, you don't know shit about that, you don't know stuff about that. Basically like personal points rather than focusing on the actual news and doing a civil discussion. But there were some interesting comments, like one person actually translating local news from Portuguese, the official language in Brazil, to English, and explaining what he read on local newspaper. Obviously this is a kind of a hot potato topic because a lot of people are fierce about Mayhem being called Nazi band, and that being the reason for cancellation. And then again, there are lots of people who are like tossing around things like, hey, you reap what you sow and blah blah blah. I mean, I get it, it's a conversation board, but not very, very good source when you're trying to find some kind of a neutral information. And by neutral, I mean you're not really looking for a conversation, but some facts, like why it got cancelled by who, and things like that. So I was kind of baffled. There are no news online. I was expecting some kind of news like on those bigger metal sites, which would definitely address topics if this was happening, say, in the United States or some other so-called Western countries, Europe or whatever. But now that this is happening in Brazil, it seems like these bigger metal news sites are not even touching it, and I find it weird, so I'm making this video because you're probably not reading about it. So once again, Mayhem is getting cancelled. Now previously, a few weeks ago, Satanic Warmaster was cancelled in Mexico for similar reasons. Hate speech, national socialism things and all that stuff, which actually led to the very thing that Satanic Warmaster made a secret kick. So that was kind of a bold and, one could say, cool move on their behalf. Now, haters gonna hate at all that stuff, but I think fans really loved that despite the officials doing whatever they want to, stop this kind of stuff happening, well, the band decided to keep true to the underground mentality and did the show nonetheless. And people were, happy about it. With the exception, of course, to people who are trying to protest the whole band and the gig in the first place. Now, Satan Warmaster is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, black metal band coming from Finland, at least when it comes to social media presence and all. But that doesn't really mean they are on the same level as the biggest Norwegian bands. So when Satanic Warmaster or bands other, I mean, other bands roughly that same coverage or size or whatever popularity you want to talk about, when it gets cancelled, it's one thing to just kind of go underground and things are done with. And it's, I guess, easier for smaller bands or mid-sized bands to be, just making quick moves, getting a proper venue for that. Because, I mean, it's not like they're organized that bigly, nor they have such big following. This is not to mean disrespect Satanic War Master or the like, more like saying they have probably the mobility, the able to just be more agile in the terms of like making quick turns and all that stuff, because I mean the bigger the band grows, the more logistics, the more all kind of organizing there is. Now when it comes to bands like Mayhem or roughly the same size, big, Marduk or Satyricon and things like that, it gets more complicated. First of all, they are being followed more accurately, so it's not like they go that easily into hiding. Secondly, trying to find some kind of a secret venue for bands like Mayhem probably not happening as easily as it would be, for Satanic War Master or smaller bands. Obviously, there are more people involved, which also makes this more complicated. Now, the other thing is, when you're big enough, you're kind of too big to fall. Like, can you imagine things like this happening to, say, Metallica? The 1980s picture which got recently resurfacing on some Latin American TikTok star who made a big fuss about Metallica's hand signs done in the 1980s and tried to make the band look like it was some neo-Nazi party and all that stuff. As funny it may sound, that really made into, music media coverage and news and all that stuff, and suddenly Metallica was right there. Even though everybody knowing the history with the band and all that stuff, knowing the facts, I mean, things like that really wouldn't fly. So Metallica would be just like way too big to fall. But that doesn't really stop from people doing that kind of a media in order to get clicks. Now people make made accusations of me doing the clickbait kind of a news when I was, for example, questioning Nurgle's comments about production and all that stuff. And now people might be making the same things about, okay, you're making this Mayhem video, so you're also clickbaiting. Now, I don't care if you decide to think like that. It's totally fine because obviously whenever you have interesting news, news are supposed to be there to cater to your needs, clickbait or otherwise. My point here is when there are big enough bands, you're not going to make changes. It's one thing to cancel Pantera on some big German festival because they're not really Metallica size anymore anyway, and one thing to cancel Metallica. These things are not, equal in terms of when it comes to possibilities. You might say there is equal justice to be served, like Metallica isn't maybe that much toxic as like Pantera or Mayhem, but let's be honest about it, the size and popularity plays a big thing in these kind of things. Now, if Mayhem really gets cancelled and they don't get to avoid, or I mean, dodge the bullet here, it remains to be seen how this will affect once again things. I mean, if you really think about it, it seems to affect this one particular gig in Brazil, not the other ones. And I'm saying ones in plural because we don't know yet if there will be some replacing concerts. Because obviously there are always people who's like, okay, it gets cancelled here. I'm gonna make another one here in order to make profit, maybe in some kind of also justice. Now, the big question obviously is Mayhem a neo-Nazi band to begin with? Now, there it does get a little bit chuckles and ridiculousness. Now, there has been reasoning, and this is why I started, making the video and digging up information, like why would Mayhem even be considered to see as NSPM band or equivalent to that, or even neo-Nazi band in any kind of cases. Now, the more I was reading about it, the more evident it became like there is nothing indicating it that, except maybe Hellhammer, the drummer, having made some, toxic comments. And by toxic, I mean in this case, he has made some racial comments, but that's not exactly the same as, being neo-Nazi. He has also worn some clothes, which could be seen as some kind of a racist remark, but once again, that's not exactly the same thing as Nazi. One could even say, like, there was comments on Metal Archives that there are these kind of edgelord things which are being said or represented, be shirts or comments or whatever. But it's one thing to have those things said and not give a fuck versus being actually politically active and making those statements. Now, once again, we're on a slippery slope. If you say nasty things with on like here, people are like, okay, that's not really cool thing to say. If you're going to say nasty thing with some slurs, well, it gets more slippier. And then if you go down the political road with those kind of comments, well, that's obviously different things. Now, the thing here is, where do we want to put those goalposts? Are you able to say anything at all, or is it supposed to be safe space kind of a thing? I mean, this is black metal after all. This is not some kindergarten music, and people kind of need to understand this. Now, what is also interesting is that Mayhem is not reacting or commenting. People were always like expecting them to react in an aggressive ways or even being apologetic. But why would a band like Mayhem actually give a damn? Why, I mean, why would you expect them to apologize? If their gigs get cancelled, they just move on. Because that's what they do. They don't bend before this kind of stuff. And I think that's the only way to do in order to be honest and loyal to their fans. Now, if some people want to now start unfollowing the band and, discard the CDs or whatever they might have of Mayhem, they're free to do so, obviously. I mean, stand behind your words and all that stuff if that matters to you. But I think it's way too far-fetched to call Mayhem a neo-Nazi band because basically there is nothing that would indicate that. Racism in certain places, I guess so, but that is still quite a bit a jump from some individual slurs to just label the whole band. I mean, it's not like Very Weakerness is in the band anymore. Hasn't been since like more like 30 years ago. And yet still some bands were like, people were making that comment, yeah, but it actually has had this member in the band. I mean, come on. Like, that is a level of ridiculousness I can't even start to comprehend. Like, where do you draw these people? I bet a lot of that comes from some kind of frustration. But mind you, there is the other side of the coin. Once you start going the path that whatever you consider toxic and is worth of canceling and getting boycotting and protesting and all that stuff, it might actually affect your favorite bands as well. Now I'm not gonna defend Mayhem. Mayhem doesn't give a damn if I defend them or not. But I'm just gonna say this is indeed a slippery slope. Once you start basically protesting and canceling all kinds of bands that might have something peculiar said in the past, something peculiar in the lyrics or cover images, be it people dead or any kind of violence or whatever. It doesn't have to be political, mind you, when we're talking about toxic content or content that might be offending. Now, this is where it gets really, really dangerous. And it's like, first you cancel this, then you cancel that, then you cancel everything that has anything else but a Disney content. And I don't think people are ready to have Disney metal being, the defining thing when it comes to extreme metal. I mean, extreme and Disney doesn't really, fit together. Now, be it as it may, we will see how things unfold after this Mayhem cancellation or possible cancellation of Mayhem gigs in Brazil. Will it affect other countries? Will it even get cancelled in Brazil? Will there be replacement events on how things are? Now, obviously, the last joke goes to people who always make fun of people saying, come to Brazil, ha 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 ha. Who wants to go Brazil after things like that? Yeah, imagine that. So, good luck with Brazilian people enjoying their metal bands coming from other countries when things go this way. Meanwhile, looking forward to your comments and let the discussion begin. Bye bye.